hardly be the top 10 Kung Fu Panda characters list if we didn't have Po, who of course is our main character. A giant panda who lives and works in his father's noodle shop, often spending his days dreaming of being a great Kung Fu fighter. He soon gets his wish when Master Oogway names him as the chosen dragon warrior, the greatest of them all. Now, I'll admit, I usually have a hard time liking main protagonists, since they're usually boring compared to either the supporting characters or the villains, whom of which I usually allow to have a lot more quirks and oddities, since they don't have to shoulder everything that comes with being the central narrative focus and audience's eye. Luckily, Poe doesn't have that problem. In fact, I found myself rather surprised as to just how much I loved his character and how well developed he was. But remember, I didn't just put him this high on the list simply because he is the main character. If I didn't think he was that interesting, then I wouldn't have had him in such a high spot, if put him on my list at all. Poe could have easily turned into another archetype that isn't really that interesting. When you think about it, this is the Moses story that we've seen many times before. And really, he's still one of many characters to fall into the Chosen One storylines, which a lot of people are getting a little sick of. But what really saves it is Poe's personality. A lot of people think that he doesn't come into his own character until the second movie, since that's the one that follows his origin story. But there are a lot of things in the first film that can still be admired. When Poe is chosen to be the Dragon Warrior and is brought to the Jade Palace, everyone else, most notably Master Shifu, isn't exactly chuffed at the idea. Poe is excited and rather bemused at the situation himself. Shifu continues to make things difficult for him, in the hopes that he will leave. But his efforts never seem to curb his enthusiasm. Poe has a lot of passion and sincerity for the things he enjoys. He's clumsy and at times a little slow, but thank God they don't overplay that aspect too much to the point where it becomes annoying. I know sometimes when writers can't give their characters a convincing flaw, they just jump straight to them being clumsy, not really understanding the proper use of having them be like that, and also pays off for them to overcome. For example, in the Back to the Future series, Marty McFly's main flaw is that his ego overreacts when anyone calls him chicken, or anything along those lines. This is something that keeps landing him in further trouble. It affects his story because he's dealing with time travel and there's always a ticking clock to save the day. Marty's flaw just keeps dragging him backwards towards his goal, giving him less time and creating bigger problems than he started with.
Let's have it out. You and me, right now.
No, thanks.
What's the matter? Where you going? You chicken?
Nobody calls me chicken.
Poe, however, is a pretty good exception to the clumsiness cliché. After all, what would a major fault and hindrance be for someone who's trained to be the ultimate Kung Fu master, and has to deal with a far more skilled opponent on the way? Being rather gawkish and ungainly certainly helps to fill that mould. That and his weight plus eating habits still fit nicely with that, but I'll talk about more of those later. The character is really funny, but his comedy doesn't come from him trying to crack one-liners. What makes him funny is just how sincere he always is. He's always so nice and almost appears oblivious without coming across as being stupid or taking the piss. His design lends him to a lot of great physical comedy. You'll find yourself surprised when you realise just how efficient and smart he is. I think even Shifu was secretly impressed by how much he knew, making it a bit more believable as to why he would be picked to be a Dragon Warrior and how he can obtain the skills he has. But despite those virtues, he has little to virtually no confidence in himself, forcing him to hold his own enthusiasm back and become quite shy when he's around real Kung Fu masters. Even when Shifu and the Five are basically bullying him, he doesn't get mad at them, instead taking shots at himself for not succeeding. In spite of all that, he still has so much drive and willpower, and does hope to make himself better, despite what people tell him otherwise.
Why didn't you quit? You knew I was trying to get rid of you, yet you stayed.
Yeah, I stayed. I stayed because every time you threw a brick at my head, or said I smelled, it hurt. But it could never hurt more than it did every day of my life just being me. I stayed because I thought if anyone could change me, could make me not me, it was you, the greatest kung fu teacher in all of China.
Even with his polite nature, he's still shown to have his limits, always giving the main villain a chance to reform themselves and be reasonable before he has to use force should they refuse. A relatable aspect of him is that Poe is very fanboyish. I'm thankful that the movie doesn't make fun of him for that. They treat it as one of his positives. In fact, I heard that the part where Poe freaks out in the Hall of Warriors is based heavily on when one of the film's directors first experienced entering the Skywalker Ranch and seeing all the Star Wars memorabilia. Truth be told, it's how I relate to him as well. I am pretty much a fangirl of many things, but mostly comic books. Anyone else similar to me will tell you that we all have those moments where we want to be like or fight alongside our favourite heroes. I usually spend most of my time daydreaming, and I think they capture that with Poe perfectly. A lot of people seem to latch onto Po, but I think quite a bit of that has to do with the actor playing him. Jack improvised a lot of lines in the movie, helping bring his own comedic flavour and sincerity to the character. Despite their many similarities and mannerisms, this is one occasion where the voice and the character gel together. Whether it's the comedy, the sincerity, or even its more serious moments, he just sells the part perfectly. Regarding Po, a lot of stuff went on behind the scenes. A few cool cameos worth mentioning is that these two pigs are voiced by Kyle Gass and J.R. Reid, Kyle Gass being the other half of Tenacious D and J.R. having a very strong connection to the band. The female bunny in the opening sequence was voiced by Jack Black's wife, Tanya Hayden. In the early stages, Po's character would have been more of an asshole and not really care much for the art of Kung Fu. As for his origin, that went through many changes. I already mentioned the one about Mr. Ping being his boss, but there were also versions saying that he would work in a wind chime factory or be living in a panda village with his mother. There was also one very striking one for me that I will mention later on. He went through various cosmetic changes. The most striking was this golden bear design. It's even hard to believe that they're supposed to be the same character. Po himself has become something of a great icon and a very recognisable character. DreamWorks has a statue of him at the entrance of their main studio building. As you may know by now, DreamWorks has opened up a new studio in China and the fishing boy logo has been replaced with a panda. You may or may not have noticed, but a lot of the animals on the list, or just in the movies, are in fact endangered species, with the possible exception of geese. I think pandas are the ones you instantly think of when you hear the words endangered animal. There is actually another type of giant panda that isn't black and white, but brown and cream. These are far rarer than any other kind. In fact, for any Londoners watching, you can find one stuffed in the Natural History Museum. Despite being very fat and round, they are sort of acrobatic in the way they roll around, and the filmmakers incorporated a lot of that into how Po moves. Now I should talk about the best part, which is his development in the second film. Po is not the clumsy and shy panda that he was in the first film. Now he's a full-fledged hero. He's brave and willing to face any fight, and now his new Dragon Warrior status has him leading the team. But his biggest development is that Mr. Ping confessed to Po that he isn't his real father, but is in fact adopted. Ping tells Po that he found him as he mysteriously appeared amongst the creative radishes that were being delivered to his restaurant. Finding this out, Po soon feels quite vexed. However, in the meantime, while on a typical save-the-day mission, the Po is attacked by a wolf that has an air of familiarity about him, as the symbol that the wolf is wearing causes him to suddenly remember the face of his mother. The Jade Palace receives a letter regarding the death of another Kung Fu master, which leads them to Gongman City to arrest the killer. This is where he meets the peacock named Lord Shen, whom the wolf works for. The longer these two are together, the more he soon realises what happened to his family before. Po started off in life with his biological mother and father in a village full of other rice-farming pandas. But one night, Lord Shen came with his wolf army with the intention to kill every single panda in the village. Not even baby Po was going to be spared. As his mother started to flee from the burning village with the wolves in hot pursuit, she sacrifices her own life and hides her son from the approaching army and gives him a chance to escape. She leaves him in the radish baskets right before Lord Shen catches up and kills her. And don't think the scene didn't mess me up. I didn't just cry, I looked like I came out of a bloody car crash once this was over. In fact, I really should mention that when I watched this film again with my parents, I was very careful to keep an eye on my own mother during this part, and I could see clearly she was starting to well up. After this scene was finished, I paused the film so we could all either refill our drinks or take a bathroom break. As I exited the room, I could see her reaching for the tissues out of the corner of my eye. And believe me, my mum is not one to cry at films, so this is quite a rarity. The only other time I can think of this happening is when we both just sobbed our eyes out at an adventure in space and time. But despite the scene, he manages to achieve inner peace and comes to terms with his loss, even offering Lord Shen the chance to forget the troubles in his own past and move on. Quite generous considering if he'd done that to me, I wouldn't be nearly as forgiving. But every single time, he always tries to talk to the villain rationally, forgive them, and offer them a chance to reform. He seems like both a great role model and a person you can come across, or even someone similar to you. Of course, the concept of finding inner peace and not letting your past define you is a great idea for the film's main theme. Through this, we see just how the flow of chi is used to its full advantage and shows what else Po is really good at. In Kung Fu, your willpower can be just as, if not more powerful than your physical strength. Chi is this incredible type of power that you apparently have in your body, and if you harness it in the correct way, you can make certain parts of your body become almost indestructible. It's how we can achieve stunts like this. Not to mention the black and white round panda design really allows for full use of the yin-yang symbol, showing the perfect balance of harmony and strength in his character, his negatives and positives, all in one adorable package. Po's design is a lot more complex than people give it credit for, just look at the art books to get an idea of that. This is what I love most, to see him go from this lovable doofus to a full badass hero. I think most other films would have kept him exactly the same as the first film, out of fear that changing his personality way too much may alienate the audience. But thank God these genius writers have changed Po for the better. So one can't help but feel excited as to what the future lies in store for him. After seeing the trailers for the third film, all we can do is wait and find out.
Shen! A panda stands between you and your destiny. What? Prepare yourself for a hot